Good morning. We will resume with our hearings today. This morning, starting with the Perishable Produce Export Certification Board. So welcome. Our evidence leader, Mr. Mfundo Ngobese, will take you through the processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Chair, I believe we have a few representatives from the PPECB, but on my sheet I have Mr. Opa Msimanga. If you can introduce yourselves accordingly.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Opa Msimanga. I'm a Regional Operations Manager, PPCB in Gauteng. PPCB in Gauteng, we are catering for OR Tambo Airport, all the national fresh produce markets, namely Joburg Market and Tshwane Market, and other sub-offices like Grobelersdal, Mokopane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Gabrielle Guess. I'm the external legal advisor to the PPCB. However, my function is to write the regulations and legislation around the Perishable Products Export Control Board.
Good morning, everyone. I am Michelle Adams. I'm the Legal and Corporate Governance Manager at the PPECB.
Thank you. We would like to conduct these interviews under oath. So there is an oath on your desk. If you have any objections to taking the prescribed oath, you can raise it. We can start with Mr. Opa.
No objection. Must I read it?
You don't have any objections taking the oath? Okay, you can read just the first part of the
I swear that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you.
The second part?
Yeah, no, the second part. You can move on to the next representative. Do you have any objections taking the oath?
I have no objection to taking the oath.
Okay.
I swear that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. And Ms. Adams, any objections taking the oath?
I have no objection, and I swear that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Thank you. All right, then we can proceed. You can just briefly tell us, or in whatever length, but preferably 30 minutes, what the PPECB is about and what its business is in relation to fresh produce, and basically the value chain of the market and everything that you guys are busy with, just to make sure that we have a smooth functioning fresh produce market.
Firstly, we'd just like to thank the Commission for the invitation to attend the hearings today. As indicated, we are from the Perishable Products Export Control Board. I do have a short presentation just to provide an overview, and copies are being made and will be handed to you just of that document. I'll also just email it to the person I've been in contact with. So very briefly, I'll just cover what we do as the PPECB, some more information about us, the nature of inspections, and then fees and levies. So the PPECB operates under two acts, namely the Agricultural Product Standards Act 119 of 1990. And in terms of that act, we act as an assignee. We are appointed by the Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, and we manage and monitor the quality standards of agricultural perishable products intended for export. So our appointment as an assignee is published in regulation number 13473, and that was done via the Government Gazette in 1991. In terms of the second act, the PPEC Act, Perishable Products Export Control Act, number 9 of 1983, that is where we get our cold chain functions from. In terms of that act, we do temperature and cold treatment management, equipment, certification, and from that we provide temperature instructions, pre-cooling. In terms of the APS Act, export certificates are issued by the PPECB. Bilateral agreements and permits, phytosanitary requirements and phyto certificates also play a role, and that is primarily done by the Department of Agriculture. I also just wanted to mention in terms of just quality inspections, we are, with regards to the EU regulation 1143, our inspectors are equivalent to an EU inspector, which means that our consignments are not subjected to full inspection, so there's reduced sampling of the products.
Thank you. And just for the benefits of those who probably don't know, what is phytosanitary?
Opa, can you just explain that, please?
Phytosanitary certificate under issue what we call an export certificate, which is a prerequisite for the phyto to be issued, which is loosely translated to say the consignment, say of oranges, that it is approved to go, say, to Botswana, it is free from or it is fit for human consumption. That is a phyto.
Thank you.
And
Maybe
if
yeah.
Okay. Okay,
You go,
Gabby.
Michelle.
I just wanted to add also, I think also that it's free from certain pests. That's the purpose of the phytosanitary certificate. So there are requirements and guidelines in terms of what we need to determine there. Just a little more information about PPECB. So in 1910, South African exports became regulated. PPECB was established in 1926. And as mentioned, we regulate the export of perishable produce. And by doing that, we create confidence in South African produce. We are a Schedule 3A national public entity, so we need to subscribe to the requirements and regulations in terms of the Public Finance Management Act. So we are self-funded. There are fees and levies that are charged by the industry, or to rather the industry and our clients, which we regulate. We employ plus minus 1,000 people. We have 32 offices nationally, and there are more or less 190 types of products that are inspected, and we service approximately 1,492 activity points. Just in terms of the nature of the inspections, so it's produce exported from South Africa, needs to meet minimum standards. We also conduct inspections in respect of standards agreed to in bilateral agreements, and we inspect listed agricultural produce, and the bulk of the inspections focus on citrus, deciduous subtropical fruit, and maize. In terms of fees and levies, as mentioned earlier, so the PPECB sets a volume budget, and that's done following consultation with industry stakeholders. The levies are determined by volume predictions provided by the industry, and PPECB's estimation of its costs. And the levies are charged, it's not to make a profit, but rather to recover. So it's on a cost recovery basis. Okay, and that's really just a basic overview of the PPECB. If there are any questions from yourselves, then my colleagues and I are happy to answer them.
Thank you. Just on the inspections, do you inspect produce only, or you also inspect the facilities where the produce comes from? Sorry, do we inspect only? The actual produce itself, or do you also do and check where the produce comes from? Do you inspect where it for instance, packaging?
I think maybe it's technical. In terms of if we call it the PPCB Act, that is to regulate and manage the cold chain. So in those functions, the inspectors do inspect cold stores, also the means of transport, so trucks or the containers, and also in the port, the containers. So that's when inspection happens. In terms of the APS Act, which is the other legislation, that relates more to the product itself. And I think the important concepts, which was your question earlier, which is a good one, is that you have to split the function between the food safety, if I'm correct, Hopa, the cold chain, and the phytosanitary. Phytosanitary is preventing the conveyance of pests and plagues. The cold chain is ensuring that, it's a perishable product, that it's kept at the correct temperatures. And then the food safety is food standards is the other requirement. So in other words, if it's a European Union Class 1 product, that would come to quality. And the inspector, and I think you can give more about that, he must make sure it meets that European Union Class 1.
Okay. Thank you. I will attempt to paint a simple picture. I've got a farm. I'm intending to export. The farm must have a food safety. Food safety, it is talking about the good agricultural practice from the production, handling, packing, and distribution. And then we'll also have a produce intended for export. And then SPPCB will come and inspect according to the standard per product. And then the outcome, or whether it is conforming to the quality of the fruit or any produce. But it starts now with the food safety, the handling part in a pack house. No pack house that is intended for export shall be allowed to sort of export. It must have. That will be a demonstration to say it is conforming to the good agricultural practice in all those stages.
All right. Are there any initiatives that you currently have with probably the Department of Agriculture around assisting the farmers, especially small farmers, to comply with the standards that you work under? Are there any initiatives that you have?
Must I take that? Yes, that is one of our strategic objectives within the organization, which is talking to the socio-economic. It is not only targeting the emerging farmers, but it is also targeting the unemployed graduate of agriculture. What we are doing, there will be a KPI which will be set on an annual basis to say, for this financial year, X number of emerging farmers needs to be at least exposed to the food safety. And that is taking place.
If I can just add to that, so we have a market access and export readiness certification program, and the PPECB has partnered with DALOT, the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development in that regard. That started in 2014, and it focuses on, as Opa indicated, good agricultural practices, responsible use of pesticides, food safety, and the outcome is to obtain an SA GAP certificate.
Yes. I presume these are designed to address some of the challenges which are faced by small farmers in trying to export their produce. Can you just indicate to us what you know about the challenges which are faced by the small farmers when they need to export their products?
So I think that is what was mentioned as part of what the program focuses on, the focus areas.
Yes.
As far as I know, it would be the food safety part, compliance with standards, infrastructure. So just in terms of the expected outcomes from that program, it is to create new market opportunities for smallholder farm producers to, as mentioned, assist them to be able to meet minimum food safety and quality standards, improved use of natural resources by producers, promotion of health and safety, working conditions in that respect, and the establishment, where possible, of partnerships.
Yes.
Gabby, I'm not sure if you want to add, or Opa?
No, perfect.
Yes, there's a thing called good agricultural practices. There's local gap and a global gap. Are those maybe the challenges which the farmers, especially the small farmers, face in meeting those particular standards?
I'm not sure, Opa.
I think I can maybe come in there. One has to make a distinction between regulatory standards that are put in place by bilateral agreements or by South Africa itself, and private standards and certifications. So Global Gap is a private certification that has been established outside of South Africa, but it's by practice been adopted by South Africa as a good benchmark. And most of South African producers, I would say, have comply with Global Gap. Am I correct?
That's correct.
But this-
Global gap or
with
local
Global
gap?
Gap.
Okay.
Then there's also one that you didn't mention, a minimum one, which is called SA Gap,
Okay.
which is also falling under PPCB, food safety. South African good agricultural practice, that is a minimum
I see.
if you intend to export.
Yes.
So it's important to make the distinction between when it's regulatory and when it's a private standard certification, because retailers will have their own different and their own certifications. The PPCB, we are implementing regulatory standards.
See. So you don't check the compliance with the private standards.
Well, Global Gap has its own inspectors as far as I'm aware.
The role of PPCB, because that will fall under Regulation 707, even if you have a global gap, PRC, HAZAP, etc., it is also the role of PPCB to perform unannounced audits on those private accredited certificates.
So you indicated that most farmers meet this gap, global gap.
Mostly,
list.
mostly.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there is obviously, I imagine, a large degree of overlap.
Yes.
Because what South African good agricultural practices will be set within an international context.
Yes.
So,
You are correct, Abby.
am I correct?
Yes.
So
So
there
in
shouldn't be material differences between the two.
I see. So your regulatory function then, do you find that most of the farmers are able to meet your own standards, which you deal with under regulation?
Do you mind?
What is the position there
Yeah.
regarding?
He asked as a general rule, are South African producers able to meet our standards?
Yes.
That is correct. The ones that they are in the export space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And those who are aspiring to be in the export space, maybe the small farmers or HDPs, have you had any successes with those?
I will attempt to respond to that. Because one will say, from the emerging farmer's point of view, there was no proper education as far as that is concerned. Like my colleague also indicated that there should also be an infrastructure in place. Talking for an example about a pack house, and then what is it, keeping records, because all these gaps actually, it's all about keeping records, demonstrating, are you doing the right things, this and that. So I would say with education, yes, in a long run, there will be an improvement.
If I can just add to that, so as mentioned, one of the outcomes are to assist them to be export ready. We don't have details as to whether there were any successes. Is that something the Commission would like us to come back on?
Yes, preferably we
us to
would
come
like to.
back on?
Yes, we would like to see if there's been any progress.
Okay, and that's you
made.
said for smallholder.
Yes, for smallholder. Yes.
Thank you.
So we understand that there are various other challenges that are faced by smallholder growers, including production of poor quality fruit, non-compliance with sanitary and phytosanitary standards, lack of irrigation water, and a lack of on-farm infrastructure such as irrigation equipment, fencing, packing facilities. Are those what you see as well when you deal with small-scale farmers?
That is correct.
Is there anything else probably that we are leaving out which you would like to point out which is a challenge faced by the small farmers?
Maybe one, I can also just quote one other thing, maybe the consistency and the volumes. If you sign an agreement with an interested party to say, I will be supplying you this and etc., what you are seeing is the emerging farmers, the volumes that they are farming at, and then also another challenge will be due to the infrastructure, they can have a product, but they will use a neighbor's facility maybe for packing purposes, which is also costly, if one can say that. Thank you.
All right, I see. Is there any role that could be played maybe by the established farmers, the industry, or government in assisting the small-scale farmers to meet the export standards? Is there any role that you see that can be played by maybe getting together in a collective action with the bigger farmers to be able to...
Yes, a partnership, it can yield positive results. Fully established farmers, for an example, mentoring upcoming farmers, and also the role of the government, which is imperative. So
yes,
that's what I can say. That partnership with all the different role players.
Yes. Would it be just limited to mentoring? Won't the established farmers be able to maybe, if you are adjacent, if you are a small farmer adjacent to a bigger farmer, maybe sort of utilize whatever services or facilities the bigger farmer has to be able to comply with your standards? Is that something that is doable?
I think there is a distinction.
Yes.
In that within the industries, and I speak predominantly on fruit, everybody is doing, there is cooperation, but everybody is doing different portions of that contribution. So the PPCB has its portion of contribution that it's doing, because the constitution of the PPCB is comprised of, appointed by the minister, as you'll see from the legislation, but it's comprised of industry representatives, government representatives, and in other words, when we refer to the consultation on the fees and levies, it has a unique composition that maybe doesn't exist in many bodies. And in that way, the PPCB is performing its mandate, and as has been indicated, but within the industry, you will be aware there are industry bodies like the Citrus Growers Association and the South African table grape industry, and they are performing certain functions alongside the PPCB's functions. And then you have Fruit South Africa, and you have the Fresh Produce Exporters Forum. And each person is performing different functions within that context. And when it comes to the smallholder farmers, then the PPCB must interface with, for example, the Citrus Growers Association, because they're a producer organization. So their membership and representation is involved at that grassroots level. And I mean, you will probably interview them, and they would be able to better. Whereas the PPCB, we operate within our framework and the training, applying the standards, ensuring food safety, keeping the markets open, because if the PPCB didn't function correctly, there would be a risk we would be blocked from a certain market, which would have devastating effects backwards.
Yes.
So it's because agriculture operates within the international context, you interlinking on different levels. And as Ms. Adams indicated earlier, the inspectors of the PPCB have been designated quite a high standing within the international community in terms of applying standards to keep our markets open. So it's for sustainability and all the functions, there's this interlinking. So the PPCB is fulfilling its mandate in the training, in applying the standards, having input in terms of what the standards should be. As when I introduced myself, it was indicated my role is limited to legislation. And because it's an interfacing with agreements and legislation in other countries. But it impacts all the way down, because if we don't keep the market open, then it would impact on all the levels, including the local market, and including a job security. I don't know if that assists you.
Yes, it does indeed. Thanks for this. Do you do the inspections on a shipment-by-shipment basis, or once you've got a certificate, then you just need to produce that certificate, and then how does it work?
It's for you.
Okay. I will say that will be based on a shipment per shipment, because quality today can be excellent, to merit can be average. So what you will declare on a consignment note to say I've got X number of pallets, the export certificate will only be relevant to that shipment. And then tomorrow or in the afternoon, if you require another inspection, that is also a different shipment. So each and every shipment, it is not a once-off to say for the whole week, for the day, for the month. No, it's per shipment.
See. Okay, so if, for instance, a farmer that has complied with your standard, maybe in order to assist a smaller farmer, takes his produce under his umbrella and then send it for shipment, for export, is that something that is allowed within your operations?
So every orchard has a production unit code, and that is critical for cold chain, for food safety, for phytosanitary. That's your starting point. And every carton that he inspects has to have that PUC number, because the thinking behind that is if a consumer eats a particular perishable product and becomes ill, they must be able to trace that product within a stipulated period of time back to where it was produced. So you have, and that's why it was indicated, part of the assistance that the PPCB is giving is assisting with the documentation, with the requirements, with the statutory requirements. Because first you have to register that PUC with the Department of Agriculture. And then if you have a pack house, you have to register that. And then you have to register as a food business operator. That it's all part of the food safety and the traceability. So farmers do they do pack together in cooperatives, but they may never lose the identification of a carton's PUC number. Because when he inspects, he has to inspect for that PUC number.
That is correct.
And that PUC number lives with that product into the retail, whether it is South Africa whether it's overseas, into any market. So that is the function that the PPCB is doing in its training, and maybe that assists to explain more because it sounds quite technical, but you know, the producer organizations can assist on the farm level. But if you don't have your documentation correct and the knowledge how to do it, you are blocked out of all the markets because you won't tick the box of food safety. And that's the role that the PPCB has to do, to ensure the cold chain, the perishable products, kept in the correct temperature for the market, that there's traceability. And that's why there isn't just a certification at the beginning of the season that you can export.
Yes.
And that accounts for all the inspectors. And that's how South Africa is successful also in the international market and also in our food safety, because we have those paper trails and registrations. And that's part of the training that Michelle was talking about. And maybe the answer she will come back to you on is, I mean, how many food scares have there been around South Africa's agricultural product worldwide?
So if I'm a small farmer, never exported before, I want to start exporting, should I approach you first and say, this is what I need to do, and then you do your inspections?
The Department of Agriculture will help you.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
sorry.
No, you go, Michelle.
Sorry, I wanted to say, so there's a process that's set out on their website in terms of what is required should you wish to export products.
Is it easy to find that information?
I think it is.
Yes, very easy. And also to register for a PUC production unit code, which will be equivalent to your IT. That will be unique to you. There's a website, and those services, according to me, is for free. Just a turnaround time, between 24 to 48 hours.
Any levies I need to pay to you?
I don't have to register.
A levies,
To
fees?
PPCB. No, not for that initial registration. So our levies, as I indicated, in the fees for the quality inspection, that's gazetted. And that's for inspections and for the laboratory services and for the cold chain side.
You are correct, Michelle, but if I can also just differentiate for an example, if you intend to sort of export to what you call non-sensitive market, that is a free service, but if now you intend to export to what Michelle presented earlier, bilateral agreement, those are the special markets where Dallard will have to send their representative to go and audit your orchard. But for other markets, your Botswana, for an example, is just an example, just an online registration. You get your PUC.
Yeah, but what's the difference between the two markets, bilateral and Botswana and the others?
Okay. Let me take, for an example, Middle East. It's what we call non-sensitive because there's no additional requirements. There is no bilateral agreement in place. But if you peg now, for an example, China, Taiwan, there's an additional requirements to say that orchard must be audited by Dallard. Then that, what is this? There's also, like my colleague also indicated, a cold chain. There's what you call cold treatment. You cannot go to China with a normal container loading, but you can go to Ghana with a normal container loading. That is a difference, which is strict in terms of to say your produce need to be under a certain temperature for a number of days while still en route to that country. That is just to ensure that there are no pests. And also during the inspection, there's also certain pests with a tolerance. If you do inspection, I can find X pest, but for the non-sensitive market, there's a tolerance. But for China, if they get one, the entire container is rejected. That is just an example. Pest-wise, additional marking requirements, was it audited? Is it registered with the Department of Agriculture? Is it also approved by the importing country as well?
And do you, in your I mean, a review of both these types of exports. Do you have a view on which one we export our fresh produce the most? Is it the less strict one or the, yeah?
I can confidently say it is for African market, road freight. Road freight. Bags of potatoes covered and then going to whichever country. It is a road freight. LNPS countries.
Yes. And you said the fees are gazetted. What is the, you can give us a figure?
So it's, as I indicated, there's a budget, volume predictions and a budget is set. And that is part of, forms part of the approval by the PPEC board. It's also sent to Dialard. And then it is published in the Government Gazette, and it sets out all the fees and the levies that are charged for the particular, well, the cold chain services under the Act, and for the quality inspections under the APS Act, as well as laboratory fees. Would you like me to send you a copy
Please.
of one?
We can get it, but you can send a copy. It will be easy for us to.
Sorry?
We can get it because it's gazetted, but
Yeah.
you can send us a copy.
Okay, I think it might be quicker if I send you.
Yes,
send
thanks.
you one.
You also talked about the presence at the National Fresh Produce Markets. If you can just expand, what are your activities there in the fresh produce market?
In the setup of the fresh produce market, you find a lot of agents, and then people that we normally deal with as PPCB is what you call agents and exporters, where an exporter will go to X agent and say, I want to procure, say, 34 tons of potatoes. And then the transaction will be concluded, and then they will now request PPECB to come and do, if it is intended for export only. Only that is intended for export. They will do their own transaction. Exporter is a person that is having an interest with the third party in the importing country, with the agent. And then if the facility where PPCB is going to perform inspection, it is complying, because now, for an example, you can't do inspection on the floor. There's another requirement that you call inspection facility requirement, where there will be access of water, because now you are peeling all those things, you are cutting, and et cetera, et cetera. We need a proper facility with a proper light for us now to identify if there's any pest or whatever cases, and then we'll perform inspection there. And also another condition will be an exporter from PPECB point of view, because we made reference to the levies. PPECB, we must also charge now that performance or that inspection. So now that client or exporter must also have an active account with PPECB for the payment purposes. And then we'll do the inspection. Outcome is passed. Outcome is rejected.
Thanks. What are the issues on the cold chain side, especially regarding access by SMMEs on shipment, like for instance to China, which requires cold storage? Is it a matter of pricing? What are the issues there for small businesses?
Okay.
I think we're not really, as a PPCB, we just do the inspections.
Yes.
And inspect the cold stores and inspect the facilities to make sure that the facilities are up to the standard.
Yes.
That's really what the role of the PPCB is. I think in respect of fees, what's important to mention, the PPCB only charges when it delivers a service. So there isn't charges to be
An exporter.
to export. It's only when you request a service, and there are different charges for different services.
Yes. Okay,
But,
so
yeah.
on the cold chain side, there are third parties who offer the cold chain facilities. So the only thing you check is whether those comply with your requirements.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Just another question on these requirements. I mean, we've heard that they are concerned regarding the potential for some food quality or phytosanitary requirements. What is your experience on that?
Phytosanitary requirements are set by the receiving country, and largely they're set based on what that country perceives to be the risk for that country. There may be academic argument that would say people use them as trade barriers, but used in the correct way, a country will identify the product is coming from South Africa, what potential pests or plagues have been found in South Africa, and we produce a similar product in our country, and do we experience that pest or plague? And if we don't, we want to prevent that coming into our market. But South Africa will do likewise on imports. If product is being imported into South Africa, the same principle would apply. And in relation to the cold chain, to answer your question, in order to protect their market, they introduce cold chain requirements or special market requirements, what he's referred to. And that means that they require certain product to go below a certain temperature for certain periods of time. And they're doing that because they feel that would then ensure that pest has been killed in transit. And they, for every exporter and every inspector, those are obviously challenges to keep. A PPCB inspector, because the requirement can be that every single container must have 2 or 3 temperature probes that need to be activated by the inspector at the time of closing the container. That measures the cold chain in transit. And when it arrives in its destination, the container is opened, and those probes must have operated. So it is technical, it is challenging, but that is the function of the PPCB, of the inspector, to make sure when that container is closed, the probes are correctly positioned, secured, and activated.
Chair, just one last question from me. Are there any material differences in standardization, grading, and quality of domestic versus export markets when coming to fruits and vegetables?
There are different standards, even by country there are different standards, but we must separate between food safety and the standard. I mean, you can get class 1, you would be able to maybe define it better.
Yes, that is correct. As PPCB, what you are declaring on your cutting to say it is class 1, then it must conform to class 1. There's quality parameters that clearly indicate to say for class 1, the fruit externally should be like this, internally should be like this, and then you find what I've called special markets. Their internal quality tends to be higher, to say we want a sweeter orange, while a normal market will say we want, I want also a sweeter orange, but that one will say we want a higher in terms. I'm hoping I'm making sense. They will say, if we do according to our equipment, they will say we want 11 as a minimum, but special market can say we want a minimum of 13. Those are the differentiated standard.
I think the important thing is, once the PUC is registered, and to put it a simple way, and if he's talking citrus, there's a citrus tree. And in a large portion of South African fruit, the citrus is being prepared for export. the citrus that ultimately ends up in the local market and the citrus that exports all comes off that same tree that was stripped down. So when you look at a particular tree, it may not be obvious to people who are not inspectors every day, but it has different sizes, it has different quality, all on the same tree. The wind may have got it on the one side and it has some scarring.
Different tastes.
Less sun, it may have a lower sugar level, but it was all one tree. Different markets, the important thing is to have different markets for that tree, because then that tree is completely consumed. So a portion of that tree will go to a certain, because different markets want different size fruit. So one import market may prefer a certain size, a smaller orange. Another one wants a larger orange. It's not only the sweetness. Different markets don't allow certain blemishes, as he's mentioned. So, but that whole tree should not be wasted. So a portion will go to the China market that meets that preference in size and taste. Another portion will go to the European Union market. Portion will be consumed locally. Portion will be juiced, because it's not even going to be purchased anywhere, but then it has a juice value. So the success is ultimately to strip down that tree and find a home for every fruit on that. But it's produced. So whether the most difficult market demanded the most difficult orange, it was prepared in the same way as the orange that we consume domestically.
So
there may be certain farms very small, and you would know better, that prepare trees only for one market. So they try and meet a minimum standard, and largely it's weather that may not have allowed that fruit in because of a blemish or not receiving enough sun on the side, or size, or water,
rain actually,
or rain. Because if it rains, they may decide not to export it because fruit that's been subjected to rain doesn't travel as well. But there isn't a difference. The tree was prepared for multiple markets, including our domestic market.
Thanks for this. So even a fruit that is rotten or slightly rotten can go into compost or animal feed.
Correct. So the aim is to use the whole tree, but it's not that it's decided to prepare a tree less because it's going to be consumed domestically. It's largely often just blemishes that cause from the weather or a concern. No, it's all treated the same, that tree.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Chair. I'm finished with the questioning, Chair.
No, thank you, Mr. Ngovese. Mr. Murray, do you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your time. I think I have a couple of clarity-seeking questions. I think the first is a comment you made about the difference between a regulatory standard and a sort of privately accredited quality standard, I guess. Could you maybe just expand on that, maybe in terms of practical examples also? What is the difference between, and I understand from a notional perspective, the one is a must and the other one is a choice perhaps, but in terms of what it means for the farmer, what is the difference between a regulatory standard and a quality standard?
So a regulatory standard is set in terms of the Agricultural Product Standards Act, and that is a regulated standard in relation to the cold chain. It's what the perishable product standard, what we do in terms of the PPCB. A private standard, they vary, but they, as far as I'm aware, they're largely implemented by retail, and it's global. And while Global Gap is a harmonization of various standards, that was the intention, that Global Gap would be a harmonization of private standards. There are many. There's, for example, Tesco's Nature's Choice, if you ask for a practical example. There's Caesar, in South Africa. There's various retailers have different standards, different private standards.
Right, and in terms of sort of, again, from the farmer perspective, if I have to comply to a regulatory standard, I mean, what would that mean for me as opposed to saying, good agricultural practice, I can't use a certain pesticide, for example. How would that compare to sort of regulatory standards?
They do differ, and the South African producer would have to comply with South African, but they would choose which markets they intend to supply, because the requirements can differ by market and they can differ by customer. And the PPCB inspects according to agreements South Africa has with other countries, or if the exporter requests an inspection per a certain country. But a private standard they can differ. Overseas, they can have different MRL levels, different minimum residue levels.
That's correct.
In other words, the chemical residue on the fruit, which is one of the aspects that's taken into consideration, you can have the European Union setting its MRL standard. We're not going to allow residues of more than a certain amount in the fruit, but a particular retailer can say we're going to have a higher standard. And if you wish to supply that retailer, you will have to meet that higher standard. And most our fruit, if not all, you will know better, is tested for chemical residues before it's exported.
Yes.
So maybe you can mention a bit about that.
Okay. If you present a consignment, it is mandatory that we must draw for the MRL, which is maximum residue level, and then the frequency of that is every third week per PUC. So if you have multiple PUC, today you pack X PUC, we'll throw it. Tomorrow you pack another PUC, we'll also throw it. But the frequency, it is every third week. Will be sent to the accredited lab, we'll get the results, we'll interpret it, and then we'll approve if it is within the limits, and then if it is exceeding the limits, because now procedurally that should maybe, it will be now maybe en route to a specific country, we'll just notify an exporter to say, please, for that market, there's a risk there, can you please divert it to another market?
Right. I mean, and the question leads to a concern we've heard about, especially from the perspective of an SME and HDP farmer, that there are so many standards they have to comply with. And I think we're dealing with instances where the farmer is saying, if I know how to comply, I will comply. It's not that I'm anti-compliance. And the concern we have is that there are so many different standards, regulatory, global gap, local gap, SA gap, CESA, all these different standards, that for an emerging farmer, it's almost impossible to separate the wheat from the chaff. What should I comply with? What shouldn't I comply with? So in your view, is there a way, is there scope that, at least for local supply, because I understand exports is different, there's bilateral agreements, there are requirements from outside. So I'm talking about local supply. Is there scope to harmonize, to bring some sort of harmonization, sort of unification on board to say there's one standard, it can be tiered, but there's one standard. There's one document essentially that we can give to farmers to say, this is what you need to comply to. This is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, whatever it might be. Is there scope for something? Is that a workable idea, or is it just too fragmented and we can't do anything about it?
We can't comment because we keep strictly to technical requirements in relation to the perishable product. So the chemical, the quality, the size, the pest and plague. Certain private standards may take into consideration aspects like environmental protection and social development and other aspects that's out of the scope of the PPCB.
I guess, but the question is, I mean, so that's an example because you've got technical requirements, you've got good agricultural practice requirements. They're all situated in different documents, different accreditation boards or standards. I mean, if someone were to come to PPECB and say, can we incorporate your technical standards, is that something that can be done, or is it, let's just keep everything separate?
No, I mean, I believe that whatever private standards there are, they will base it on the minimum. Because you have to keep the minimum standard, which is the Department of Agriculture's APS standard and the PPCB standard. So,
Department of Health.
And Department of Health. So, yeah, I mean, it is a basic standard and everybody adheres to it. And I'm not aware of confusion about standards. Are you?
No.
All right. There's the last thing I want to touch on is it's a submission that came out in your written submission to the Commission about a global gap in particular can increase SME participation. I think it's from the perspective that, well, then that allows them to access export markets or global markets. And I think what we've heard is something slightly different to say, well, there's a cost to compliance and global gap is very expensive. I think we've heard it earlier this week as well, that global gap is very expensive to get accredited to and get sort of maintain the standard. I mean, so in your view, isn't that sort of contrasting views to say it can increase participation, but that at the same time it's difficult to comply? I mean, do you have perhaps you want to expand on on that comment from your perspective?
From the PPCB's perspective, we're the regulator. We must comply with what the law says must be implemented to ensure that the markets remain open. And I don't believe there's any confusion about our standards. They're the minimum standards that are required to keep the minimum requirements on food safety, phytosanitary, and the cold chain. The private standards, those largely rest outside the PPCB scope with the retail, and the PPCB doesn't have an influence over the private sector's private standards.
I mean, and because I think that links to your market access export readiness certification program, and as I understand that from your submission as well, that is sort of to say, well, can we try and get SMEs to a standard and not a technical regulatory standard to a private standard, a quality standard called, in your words, the SA gap?
Yes.
I mean, so you have scope there, but you're saying you don't have scope in terms of private standards.
Well, global gap is the private standard that the export industry appears to have accepted, and it's probably the one that most, and you would have heard that, do aspire to and do register. And I'm not sure on the ground, are most your inspections, they're all global gap registered?
I will say, what is this? 90% of our grain clients, they are SA gap. Fruit, I would say 90+% is global gap.
And it makes sense, I think, if you're an exporter, right? So you have to comply with the highest standard, which in this instance is global gap. I'm asking from a perspective of an SME, an emerging farmer that says, I want to grow, I need to start somewhere, I want to grow, maybe in 10 years or 20 years I'll get to that export level, and then I'll comply with gap, but where do I start? And we're saying this program you have is sort of the entry-level program to say, let's help them get to what's called an SA gap. Right, so I mean, and then the question is, I mean, while you do have this sort of influence at least, or this role to play in getting farmers SA gap, what you call SA gap certified, I mean, isn't there scope to sort of expand that, further into, perhaps up to global gap or even just to other local gap standards? I mean, and not the sort of, well, we're technical standards and we've got nothing to do with the private sector sort of approach.
As he's mentioned, they're different products. So with grain, it's SA gap is an acceptable uniform standard.
Yes, and also if I can recall, in the past, PPCB, we were also in a space of private accreditation. But I think that was declined by the decision makers to say we stick to the statutory.
Yeah, maybe you can
requirements.
expand on that. So, I mean, so in a sense where you're saying PPCB wanted to enter the sphere of private accreditation, was told by decision makers don't.
If I can just come in here, we operate strictly under two mandates.
Statutory.
And that's
Yeah.
what we have to implement. So it's the PPEC Act and it's the APS Act.
So where does SA Gap fit in is my question.
So,
That is under APS Act, Regulation 707. You can just make
Food
a note.
safety.
Yeah,
Food
food safety,
safety.
and then Ishabasco can provide more
I
information
can
to it.
send you that regulation as
Regulation.
well.
Right, so SA Gap is not similar to local gap and global gap in the
No.
private sense of the word that we've dealt with.
No.
It's only relevant to food safety standards, is what I understand.
Yes.
And the local market, I mean, I'm not a market expert, but the local market can also be a good market because you don't have the risk of the transit. So, you know, when you mention the new farmers entering the market, we mustn't dismiss the local market. It's a big market. And there isn't a risk when you put fruit in a container and you ship it. There's a high value in that container, and if it goes wrong, there's a fairly severe financial impact. When the local market, your supply chain is shorter, and there are benefits and there are risks. In all the markets, there's a benefit and a risk.
Right, I mean, I'm basically done, Chair. I mean, just in the context is, you know, the debate we're having is the inquiry is we are exactly not rejecting the local market, and yet the local market is requiring a global standard to participate in the local market, and we're debating whether that is, whether that leads to efficiencies, whether that creates barriers. When retailers and others are saying, you know, there's one standard from an accreditation point of view, and that is the global standard, and we don't want to deal with anything else, then we are considering whether that is creating barriers or not.
No, we won't know. You won't know. You just
No, I won't
inspect.
know.
You won't know.
What is
No.
intended for
No.
export.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Maybe let's just follow up on that, because I just wanted to find out from you, because you are a regulator, right? What are the kinds of complaints? Do you get any complaints from farmers about how you serve them? So are there any issues that you have picked up broadly, you know, as you are discharging your mandate?
I can answer that, Chair. So we do an annual stakeholder survey, and those, I'm not sure when they do that. It's sent out to all our
that is around,
customers, and the responses
November.
are evaluated. And the report is done to EXCO and to our board as well. We'll receive information on that. So if there are complaints, that is where they would come through to the organization. But we do have a target in terms of our stakeholder engagement.
Which is 80%.
And as far as I know, we have met that target.
What have been the nature of the complaints you get from farmers?
Maybe one or two.
Okay, no, I will be specific now to my region. Common one will be taken into account around Gauteng Central. There's a lot of traffic. A client will require an inspection, say, around 11 o'clock. You are on a R21, suddenly there's an accident. You are only arriving there around 1 o'clock. So according to the client, their perception is, what is this, we are understaffed. But those are just the common complaints. And then to say, we are also sending our MRL sample, but we don't get them according to the SOP within the 4 days. But now it also comes now with its own unique challenges. If you are in a remote area, there's only one courier company driving that site, it is bound. And then if now they are missing that, or that courier company didn't come for some reason, there's a delay in a week. Those are the common mistakes, specifically in my region, in our region, Gauteng.
And so when we maybe look, because I just want to make sure that because we have covered fruits that we think are probably the most important, which is apples, citrus, bananas, pears, I think, and table grapes. Have we missed any product that you think, at least on fruits, that you think it's quite crucial for exports?
No, from the local markets, those are the biggest commodities. I was checking the volumes for the past 3 years, according to the subtrops, avocados, a lot is intended for export, mangoes, a lot is intended for export, lychees, a lot of is intended for export from the fresh produce market.
And with vegetables, you're saying vegetables, is it mostly the region? Can you just confirm that? So all this we have potatoes, onions, carrots, cabbages, tomatoes, and spinach.
Okay.
What are we exporting here, and which regions maybe?
Okay, yeah, well, from the PPCB perspective, it will be, we are splitting, it will be potatoes, it will be onions, and then the other vegetables, they will all fall under vegetables. That is for the taste purposes. Otherwise, now you'll have cucumber, lettuce, etc., and then we'll say everything. And then one of the biggest commodity that is being exported, and it has been consistent, is vegetables. Potatoes for the past 2 years, they went down. I've got the stats maybe for the past 2 years, if you like. And then onions, they are seriously impacted. For the past 2 years, the volumes are going down.
I think those stats would be very helpful, so that we just understand the picture.
Okay.
Now,
it will be sent to you via Michelle, is fine.
Right. In terms of your reach, I think, because you have about, is it 32 offices nationally, and I think you obviously were speaking for Gauteng. How far is your reach into this? How close are you to the agricultural centers? At least for the major export commodities. So if you go Limpopo, Mpumalanga.
Okay.
So what's the reach? Because I think I just asked about it seems Gauteng maybe traffic, yes, but just the reach. How satisfied are you with the kind of reach you have as the regulator?
Okay. As I've indicated earlier, to say Gauteng, one of the sub-offices is Groblersdal, where there's a lot of grapes and citrus. We've got the sub-office there. We've got fully operational staff there. During the citrus season, we can go up until, say, 38 inspectors, only in Groblersdal. So that will be covered. Driving distances with minimal traffic, the longest it can be 18 kilometers, and then you are at the packhouse. And then if I can also take my colleagues also, Litsitele, around Itsanin, there's also a lot of citrus. We've got an office also in Itsanin. Nelspruit, we've got an office. Beggersford, we've got a sub-office. Malelane, we've got a sub-office. Closer to Messina, we are also having so it is where there's a lot of activities, and then we'll open and then employ people there.
Thank you for that. And maybe just to ask you on the transformation question, right? And what observations have you made? I think you have listed, you've given us, I think, the top 20 farmers, but it seems you have listed, maybe it's public information, around 200, right? farmers, but you can confirm this. Just the makeup of the farmers you have listed for exports and the kind of demographic profile of those farmers.
We'll provide that information along with the other.
Broadly, you are there, you observe this. Well, what do you see? Broadly, you can give specific numbers later. What are you seeing? So if it's citrus, are you seeing a lot of participation by historically disadvantaged persons? Or what are you observing as the regulator?
I'm not sure if he can respond because of the makeup of his region. I'm not sure if you can respond to that. I think we'll have to go back to the officers. So OPA's part of the North region, and there are two other ROMs within that region. So I'm not sure that he can respond to that.
I understand that. If he's not able to respond now, it's okay.
Yes, we'll come back. Thank you so much.
We'll get the information, because we just ask this from the point of view of understanding participation in the market. And can you confirm, I think we have recorded the exports as about 65% of the, or 60 or thereabout of the total market. Is that a correct understanding and the correct picture from your view? Point.
You mind to repeat that?
No, the makeup of exports relative to the total production of fresh produce in the country. We have a number around, is it 60, 65%? I just want to get a sense if it aligns with the data you have.
Yeah, but now I'll be specifically now talking to Gauteng, which I didn't think. I'm not just 100% sure if would that be accepted or. But
oh yeah, I was asking about the national picture. I don't know whether your legal team has any.
Yeah, but we can get back to you with
come
those
back to
statistics.
that.
Okay,
So
no,
we will
that's
have them.
fine. That's
Yeah.
another, just to confirm.
Yeah.
Confirm so that we have a common understanding of this. There's this question I think the evidence leader asked, and I just want to understand this about the grading. What is this grading system? So because we now know, I think there's class 1 or there's grade A, but what is the spectrum? What is it? And what is predominantly in the domestic market, right? And what is this sort of one specific for exports that is not found locally, or what is it? What is the, so that we understand the grading, and because we will also be engaging on pricing issues, but this I will not be raising with you.
The Agricultural Product Standards Act, I think the standards are advertised. What comprises class 1, class 2, RSA 1?
Okay.
Can you sum it up in easy?
yes, please. I'm just trying. What is differentiating according to the classes specifically? Class 1, class 2 processing, and I will use a citrus as an example. The difference will be a tolerance. If you perform inspection, obviously there will be defects, which will now, count and then express that as a percentage. Class 1 will be stricter to say for a specific defects, we can only allow, X percentage. Then another huge difference will be the appearance of the fruit, for an example. We've got what we call a color chart. So if we have seen color charts to say, for class 1, we can allow fruit from number 1 to number 4. And then anything that is worse than number 4. A color chart for citrus, it will be made out of 8 pictures, from the excellent and then to the worst. And then it will say for class 2, it will be, we will allow fruit number 5 and 6. And then fruit number 7 and 8, it will be out. It will be for processing purposes. That is where the difference from the external appearance it is coming. And also for certain products, if it is exceeding a certain allowable percentage, and then it will be downgraded to be grade 2. I'm not sure if that is assisting.
It does help. The reason why I and maybe you can help us really from a regulator's perspective. I'm asking this so that we can go to the private, because I need to understand a bit more the role and oversight on the private entities that grade, because there have been concerns, that there is some gatekeeping in that grading process, targeted, I suppose, at certain farmers, but this is a general concern. So I needed to find out from you. So there's a legal requirement, but who then oversees the grading across, even at markets, or where you have the private entities grading, either for export. I suppose if it's for export, well, you can export. It's not for export, then you'll have to sell it in the domestic market.
Yeah, the PPCB can't answer that. We would have to speculate. We can't answer that because from a PPCB point of view, as you indicated, it's regulated, the standard, it's uniform, there are color charts. Within the PPCB, you do harmonization, don't you, to make sure that your interpretation of that color chart is the same as someone else's interpretation of the color chart. And there's nothing further we can add to that. No, you only inspect according to
What is presented.
what is presented.
All right, who regulates the private players? Maybe that you can answer, I hope.
Can you assist there?
I'm not sure. I mean, if it's intended for export, then it's the PPCB. If it's not intended for export, then I'm not sure who would regulate.
I thought, I'm hoping I heard you correctly, that they are, you inspect, right? But they are also private entities. Did I hear you correctly?
No,
What is the role of the private entities?
No, a
in the process?
supermarket, no. So at an inspection point, the PPCB will conduct the statutory inspections and will sign off on the documentation, and the export will happen. Besides that, I presume there's the consumer, the people that come and buy at the market.
That's correct.
They would choose what product they're going to buy. The local market standards, that would also be in terms of agricultural product standards, but we don't deal with that. Who deals with that?
No, we don't. There's certain bodies, but we're not involved.
Yeah, we're not involved. I think what you need to read is the Agricultural Product Standards Act and see who's appointed as the assignee for the local market. So the Agricultural Product Standards Act sets the standards, and the executive officer, in terms of the Agricultural Product Standard Act, appoints an assignee to do the job. And the PPCB has been appointed in terms of a regulation to enforce the exports. But the executive officer has a discretion, in terms of the legislation, to appoint local market assignees. And I think to answer your question, you should be able to find that who is the appointed assignee. But We can't speculate
So-
who they are.
If I could just add to that, so that also would be something that would be gazetted, that you'd be able to
To be
pick up from.
gazetted.
So if I can assist, Chair, I think you did indicate that there are private standards.
Correct.
And then there is the regulatory standard.
Yes.
And maybe the question is who then looks after the private standards? Is there any appointed?
The customer, I suppose, who's receiving the product would say we require these standards, and presumably the customer would inspect, are those standards met? But it's not done by the PPCB.
Yeah.
But you can look and see the assignees appointed. It'll be gazetted who's appointed to do the local market.
So there's no. So what I need to establish is whether there is at any point a middleman before the who sort of receives the product, can sift it whichever way before it's inspected by yourselves. If there is any, because this is something that we, because you, how do you deal with the farmer? So you deal directly with the farmer?
So, yeah.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes. Yes.
To my knowledge, there is no middleman appointed to be doing that. We are directly dealing with a farm. A farmer will call me if I'm an inspector and say, my load is ready, can you please come and do inspection? Or can you please come and perform inspection? There is no middleman there. It's directly, and then once it is approved by PPCB, the next stakeholder that is going to issue a file to it is DALART, Department of Agriculture.
So that chain is wholly regulated by the PPECB,
For
right?
exports.
For exports.
For exports.
Yeah, we're asking for exports because
Exports.
just
Yes.
understanding
Yes.
Yes.
the
Yes.
barriers that a particular farmer would have to face for exports.
Yes.
All right. And you have in your submission outlined some of the challenges that you have picked up, right? With especially for small scale farmers. It's page 7, your paragraph 19. I think you've mentioned infrastructure costs, fencing, pesticide stores, etc. Can you expand on this? Particularly, I think you were talking about compliance with the good agriculture practices.
What is it?
Page 7.
Page 7, yeah.
Yeah.
Paragraph 19.
Okay. Compliance with small scale farming.
And what is the question?
So can you expand on this, on the challenges and how these can be mitigated? You've just given something which is non-exhaustive, but I just want to get a sense from the regulator's side.
Okay. Infrastructure cost, a practical one will be, according to me, I've got trees, they're bearing fruits, but I don't have a facility where it can be packed. Just an example from me. And then I will have now to go to the neighbor for it to be packed on my behalf at a cost. And then fencing, yes, it is evident. Where the emerging farmers, they are farming, and it is also evident in the allocations. There will be an infrastructure of a fencing, but due to high theft, tomorrow there is nothing there. Pesticide stores, no, pesticides is not the simplest thing because there's also a lot of requirement there. Not everyone can just go and apply pesticides or fungicides. A person needs to be trained. Infrastructure also requires a training. A tractor, which is also a challenge. And then a person needs to be trained. Keeping of the records for the pesticides application, those are the things. based on my own observation, but to say how can we mitigate this?
I think the one way the PPCB is mitigating is training in terms of the records, what the requirements are, how to keep the records so that the requirements are met.
That's correct. Because if we do good agricultural practice audits, it comes back to the audits. Show me, did you do it? What time? Who did it? Where's the competence, and etc. Just records.
It's records.
So it's correct to say to sort of conclude maybe that if farmers, so small-scale farmers, HDP farmers, they comply to the good agricultural practices as stipulated in the relevant legislation, we would see more participation, hopefully in the local and domestic market. So is this what you see? I just want to understand this very well.
Mr. Chairman, it's the interlinking, which I
Right.
mentioned to you. One leg of the table can't stand alone. The PPCB can't stand alone. It's a table. In terms of regulatory structure. And so the PPCB is contributing where it has the expertise in terms of implementing as a signee the requirements of the executive officer and implementing the requirements of the overseas markets and training people to understand those and assisting with the documentation. But the Department of Agriculture is doing a different portion of it. And then the industry bodies are doing different portions of it. The Citrus Growers Association, the SATI, the table grape, everybody has a different component. And that's why some of the aspects we can't answer today because the PPCB is not involved in the actual farming. So we can assist in terms of training as to what documentation is required of farmers who wish to export. But there's another role player that is engaged with production.
Right. No. So thank you for that. And maybe the last question I have, and this is really a broad question because just as you inspect, I just want to get a sense over time, what in your view has been the impact of maybe climate change, especially I think you have mentioned the main issue around, it matters the kinds of inputs you use, fertilizer, pesticides. What has been the trend? And I think you have some, I think exports are declining, some I suppose are increasing. But can this be attributed in any way to changes?
Yeah, let's take for an example,
the climate,
under climate change, I think we've seen also from the news what have happened in the area of Glen William, Citrus Valley areas. That directly impacted in terms of the volumes which were initially forecasted to be exported. That also damaged an infrastructure, which made it impossible for the movement of the trucks to come and pick what have already been inspected. So that was a climate change. What is also continuously happening, it's a sudden weather changes. If we are ready now to pick up, to harvest our fruit, and then there's suddenly a lot of rain, which is also impacting the timing of harvesting. Because the fruit won't see, because it had rain, let me now also not grow. That is still continuous. So, yes, it has. And then what is this? It is also evident, especially from the local markets, volumes of the onions. And if you go and purchase 1 kg onion now, I don't know what is the price there, but it is loosely translated to that.
Right. Thanks for that. And the kinds of inputs we use, do they? Because I think there have been a lot of changes at the input supply levels. I think with a lot of acquisitions and so forth. But what? Because you say you look at the kinds of, is it the chemical input? So what are you observing on fresh produce in South Africa? Are you picking up more, anomalies or less? Are we using better or inferior inputs? What's been your observation on the ground?
Okay, one of my roles as a regional operations manager is to also ensure a better client relations where I will normally interact. I'm not actively involved now during the production, but what was evident was because of the war, which country is that? Ukraine. And I'm told that quite a lot of our fertilizers, they are originating from that side, which led to the higher cost of the fertilizers, which is indirect or directly impacting their production. What is also evident is also the impact of the load shedding. If now it's time for me to irrigate, I can't irrigate because of a load shedding, because now there's high costs associated with the oil. That is now through now communicating or interacting with the clients. Those are the concerns that they are also raising. And also what they are also continuously saying, it's a higher cost of labor. Because associated with load shedding, we need to pack. Now people must wake up at abnormal hours, which is leading to overtimes and etc. So those are the direct impact. This one is associating. I'm not involved.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that information. So what I was, because you are the inspectors, right? That when you inspect the product, are you finding that we are using the right inputs to meet the requirements, of the export markets? Because I think I think you had said you look, you cut, you chop, you taste, you is our product in good shape? Maybe let me ask it in that way.
I think we are one of the best globally. I think that will assist to change.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Msimanga. Unless if Mfundo, you have.
Yes, Chair. There is a follow-up question. In fact, it may have been left in the earlier questioning. We've heard from various participants who came before us, before you, that there are problems at the national fresh produce markets in terms of infrastructure, sanitary standards. Is it something that you are observing, both from when you do your inspections for the export, and also if you walk into the local? Do you see any sanitary issues there in the fresh produce markets? Is this what you've observed in your inspections as well?
I think what he wants to know, is there anything that hinders you in doing your job at the local market?
Yeah, well, there's certain days. We know that on Mondays it is a very quiet day. But from Tuesday until Friday, there's a high population of people there. That accompanied with the heists and etc., that poses a risk. But other than that, the clients that we are dealing with directly, because they are conforming to the SA cap, their facilities, they are reasonably, or they are complying actually. Not say reasonably, they are complying.
And on the local side, do you observe any non-compliance? Is the local side up to the standard of the export? side of the market?
No, because of what is this, a high demand of work around there. We don't even have time to go and walk just to go and observe, for the local, because that is not in our space. So what we are just focusing is just to wait for a client, do your paperwork, wait for a client, go to another premises, and etc. But other than that, we are not. I can't recall when did I just take a walk.
No, thanks.
No, so thank you, Mr. Ngobe. So maybe it's really a more direct question because we had something here about is it hygiene at the markets, and the reason retailers maybe some or one, and it's one at this moment, why they are not sourcing product from the market, but yet it's the same market that's selling product for export, right? So this is what I think from just experts' point of view. So when you visit different markets in South Africa, what do you see? Is this the kind of dramatic conclusion that I think one ought to reach, or are these markets keeping, I suppose, to the standards in terms of hygiene? And I think that was the point that was raised.
Yes, that's correct.
Maybe we just needed your perspective, to the extent that you visit the markets, but if it's limited, you don't have to comment.
No comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Msimanga and Miss Adams and Miss Guess. Unless if you have anything you want to say, your closing remarks, we will excuse you.
No, thank you so much for your time, and we will forward on the documentation.
All right, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of this session. Our next session will start at 11:45 sharp. I just want to check if the stakeholder is around and ready. It's around, perfect. So we will start at 11:45. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
We resume the session. We now have the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. The evidence leader is Mr. Derek Bowles. Over to you, Mr. Bowles.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Maybe just to start, please, we've got Delrad today. If you can, gentlemen, if you can please just state your full names and designations for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Stanford Mantata from Directorate Marketing. I'm responsible for agro-logistics and market linkages. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, all. My name is Sithembele Kelembe. I'm from Directorate Marketing as well, Director. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Billy Makafula from the Directorate Food Safety and Quality Assurance. I'm the director there.
Thank you very much. We've been conducting the proceedings under oath. You'll see there's a laminated document there in front of you. If you could please just indicate whether you have any objections in taking the oath. And if not, then can you please just read out the oath for purposes of the record, please. Let's just go one by one. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I read what is in front of me?
That's right. Just the oath or the affirmation, either or.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I swear that the evidence I shall give shall be truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Yep.
I swear that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
I swear that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole. I swear that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
All right, thank you. Maybe just in terms of housekeeping, we've divided the session up into two portions. The first session will be a 30-minute allocation to yourselves, maybe just to tell us a bit more about the Department of Agriculture, what it is that you do, what your portfolio consists of. And then the second portion will be with the technical team, asking some questions that we've prepared, and then that would be followed by some questions from the panel as well. I think maybe we can just start then with your first little introduction, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Like I said before, my name is Thembele Kelembe. I'm from the Directorate Marketing at the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. The branch name is Economic Development, Trade and Marketing. We have in that branch 3 chief directorates, and the marketing belongs under a chief directorate that is called Agro-Processing, Marketing and Rural Industrial Development. There's another chief directorate, that is international trade, international relations and trade. The last one is cooperatives development. That is how we are structured as the branch, and as you would probably be suspecting at the moment, matters that deal with markets belong in that branch, that is economic development, trade and marketing. So we are the ones who deal with the operations, not necessarily the operations at the markets, but issues relating to national fresh produce markets will be dealt with in terms of the department by the branch and specifically by the Directorate Marketing. I hope that captures the who we are.
That's perfect. Yeah. So maybe what I can do is just some introductory type questions to lead you into the session. So maybe start with the department itself. You are the custodians of the agricultural sector. Is that correct? All right. And your mandates in the agricultural value chains. Maybe if you can just expand on that for us, please.
In terms of the agricultural value chains. Perhaps before I get into that, my colleague would chip in as well, because he also has a role to play.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, no, it's very informal. So whoever who's best placed to answer questions or to add value to the sessions, please just go ahead.
No, we'll answer them.
That's perfect. Thank you. I think it's been thrown to you.
Yes, look, let me start with myself. I am, as I've indicated, I'm Billy Makafula, and I am the director responsible for food safety and quality assurance within the department. There are two main acts that drives activities within that directorate. There is the Agricultural Product Standard Act 119 of 1990. We do have Liquor Product Act 60 of 1989. And within that directorate, we have the unit that is responsible for development of policies, your standards, local regulations, as well as export standards and requirement. We also have the unit that is responsible for analytical and testing of product, compositional properties of product, as well as contaminants. That is the laboratory, both in the north, that is Pretoria, and in the south, that is Stellenbosch. And we also have the responsibility of assigning some of these mandates in terms of application. We have assignees that operate under the Agricultural Product Standard Act, and those assignees are split between those that are responsible for export. In the main, for export for all the product, PPCB is the assigned agency in that respect. Then you have the different assignees that are operating. But in the main, the one that operates in the national fresh produce market, and of course other retailers for fresh produce specifically, that would be Procon. That is one of our assignees. Those assignees mandated in terms of Section 2 of the Agricultural Product Standard Act. And of course, the other issue that we have is that we have also a mandate to liaise so that our standards, specifically when it comes to exports, are harmonized with different international markets, that is, different countries. So we participate in different multilateral setting bodies, like your Codex, UNEC, and OECD, in terms of harmonizing standards, as well as coming up with color charts that gives interpretations to different quality defects that we may actually be referring to. So you have something demonstrable to actually match up something that may not necessarily be described in words. So essentially we are about grading regulations at best. That is what actually sums up our regulations. We come up with regulations and we ensure that there is an application either through the departmental inspectors in some instances, but right now specifically we have two agencies, for export being PPCB, for local being Procon. And that's who we are in a nutshell. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe just in terms of those assignees, these entities obviously report to the department. Do you have any reporting and monitoring mechanisms to monitor their progress in executing their duties and their mandates specifically?
Yes, we do. We do have we have an SLA, but of course the Act also instructs us that they would actually have to operate in terms of directions that are coming from the executive officer if there is no any provision in law that actually directs otherwise. So we do have standard operating procedure. Our own inspectors from within the Department of Agriculture monitors their operations, and they do actually give us monthly and quarterly reports on their performance.
All right. So you're able to hold them account for some of the observations that you as government are making in the market, insofar as their respective areas of operations are concerned?
Yes, we do try. We don't necessarily be as comfortable as we want to because of capacity constraints, but we do have that mechanisms in place, and we do have inspectors who go around and monitor how they actually...
So to what extent are you trying? I mean, what you said capacity constraints are holding you back?
So we have inspectors from time to time that actually go and actually monitor that they do actually apply the regulations as they should. We do have sessions where we harmonize interpretation of the standard, because you would actually understand that it's very subjective sometimes depending on... So we do actually harmonize and see how far do we stray from each other in terms of coming to a point of convergence. So in that respect, we do have control. And the fact that if there are complaints coming from the stakeholders, be it the consumer or the public at large, we are able to summon certain reports or even go after and observe whether indeed the kind of complaints that has been registered with us is actually as something that can be imputed to their operations and how they apply the regulations.
All right. So you've assigned them roles with specific reporting duties and timelines. Now we'll go to the master plan a little bit later, but we just in terms of that master plan now. So there are assigned roles, at least in terms of that policy, with reporting lines in place. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Aside from the fact that the Act is very straightforward, there's sections in terms of which they are assigned. So in the main, it is very clear, it is already statutorily set out. It is only in instances where it is not clear that we actually come in the form of SLA or direction. So we do have those kind of controls, yes.
All right, great. So onto the master plan now. What is the current status of the master plan?
Yeah, maybe the master plan may not necessarily be something that one can be able to answer on now, because I think it's a program that resides at the minister's office. Maybe you may have to make the application to talk to the office straight, because from where we are, we're not necessarily responsible for the management of that master plan.
All right, but you would be responsible for carrying out that master plan. Is that right?
Yeah. If I may chip in, the master plan, everybody in every section in the department has a role to play. And as you would perhaps know, the master plan is actually for the country. It's not only necessarily the department. That's not the only stakeholder or role player. I am assuming that we are referring to the agriculture and agro-processing master plan.
Yeah, the one that was signed in, I think it was in May 2022.
Yes, that's the agriculture and agro-processing master plan. What are the processes involved are now, with the limited information, as he has indicated, is that we're still trying to get the third partner, social partner, or let me just say the other social partner, which is Labour, because Labour didn't sign at the time the AMP was signed last year. So there is a parallel process that is being done, and the department has actually engaged or given a mandate to the National Agricultural Marketing Council to run with that process such that we also get, at the end of the day, labor to sign onto the process.
All right, so we can assume that nothing material has actually happened since May last year.
At this stage, we can safely assume that.
All right.
Sorry. I think probably maybe there has to be expatiation on precisely what it is that you mean that nothing has actually happened. Because the master plan as it is now, it actually sketches out what is currently in place. It's also the aspirational part of it. So which of those aspects are you saying that they've not actually been realized?
Well, the objectives that are stated in there, I mean...
some of them are actually realized, because if you talk about market access, we're actually doing that. That is one of those things, that objectives that master plan seeks to do.
Mm-hmm. So maybe expand on that first.
Yes.
Tell us what is happening with regards to market access.
Okay. So market access works this way. We actually open market, but at the same time we discuss with different countries, and as we speak now, there are 3 countries that we have actually clinched agreements on. China is one of them in terms of avocados. We have Philippines that is on the radar now. We're just completing the agreement in terms of sanitary and phytosanitary agreements, which tentatively in principle we've agreed, just clearing there and there. So there's going to be a market there. Indonesia, we have open market insofar as soya bean is concerned. We are working on the PRA. So that is why I'm saying that there has to be context to that question, because to say that we have not done anything in respect of that, that would not necessarily be a true reflection of what is actually the department is about exactly what most of what is contained there. So it will actually, if we say that we have not done anything, it means that the department is not necessarily operational. There are aspirational aspects that we can actually say that they're still going to be realized or refined, and the inclusion of others will certainly come in. But in the main, as and when it was even a concept, there were activities that are actually embedded in that master plan that are realized. And so to give a good answer to that, we'll certainly say that there are certain things, probably 80% of it, which are in the mix.
All right, perfect. So maybe, to expand on that, to what extent has DALRAD had policy discussions with relevant stakeholders and social partners at a national level to ensure the successful implementation of the master plan at provincial and municipal levels?
That is another question that you cannot have a direct answer. We are consistently in communication with stakeholders. So we probably, maybe it would not be, I would not be the right person to respond insofar as local government is concerned, as we're saying. And I cannot necessarily say that, preclude that such discussions are not taking place. They could be taking place. The department is too big. We are but one part of the department. We have directorates. Yeah. So there are discussions that might be taking place. Let me not necessarily say they are taking place. They might be taking place specifically with respect to municipality. But at any given time, as we speak now, there could be discussions taking place in other units.
All right. I think maybe let's narrow the focus a bit here. So the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry, the FPMI, we've just finished up a round of workshops where we've gone out to small-scale farmers around the country and had meetings with them and on various issues relating to our terms of reference. A number of issues have been encountered relating to the deterioration of the water infrastructure. So specifically the original furrow system from the Tegela and Bushman's rivers, which the small-scale farmers were indicating at least that these were not properly maintained and were damaged by floods, and the dams were not maintained properly as well in that Tegela Ferry region. These problems have persisted since 2011. So going back to the master plan, one of the 6 pillars upon which the master plan is based is to raise an estimated 9.4 billion rand for the fast tracking of targeted infrastructure maintenance and expansion of irrigation schemes, dams, dipping tanks, the fresh produce markets, and the processing infrastructure by 2030. So maybe just focusing now specifically on the 9.4 billion rand in the infrastructure maintenance and development. Can you maybe provide a broad outline of the plan that the department has in achieving this goal?
Through you, Chair, it will not be. I'm not so sure how to put it. I will not be able. We will not be able to report on that one because, like he indicated, we're only part of the department. We are not denying the responsibility, but we are not the part that deals with the question that we've just asked at the present moment.
Is this one of the aspirational things that you mentioned, or is this something a little bit more? Because I mean, the 9.4 is quite a specific number.
You see, the description itself, as you actually indicated, there's also a target that has been given. So we don't want to hazard an answer that necessarily may distort. But then what you have implicit in what you said is that there's 230. By 2030, that should have been realized. Possibly at that time, that question could actually be germane, I suspect.
All right, so there isn't a plan at this stage currently. I mean, 2030, doesn't sound like a long time away, but we're already in November almost of 2023. That's 6 years' time. Is there a plan? I mean, is there something that's in place at the moment that we can look at?
I thought you were reading it from the plan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is in the plan.
Yeah.
And there is a target date that is 2030. So the plan itself is what you actually read from. So which means that there's a plan in place, isn't it?
It's an umbrella document. Really.
Yes.
But I mean, isn't there something that is a little bit more specific that we can look at, where the guys are planning something out? There's specific steps. I mean, raising 9.4 billion rand.
Like we indicated that we are, and we actually made it very clear that also we took and we were actually assigned precisely because of the content of the questions that were given to us. So that question may not necessarily be answered dispositively by ourselves.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, I think the following questions. All right, maybe let's move on to transformation, specifically at the producer level. Is that something that you can speak to?
Well, I think maybe before we go to the issue around transformation, it may also be important maybe to give a bit of background.
Please,
in terms of some of the things that we did in the past and the challenges that we have experienced, and what is it that we are trying to do to deal with the problems. What happened was that around 2013 or 14, we were approached by Potato SA and IMASA. IMASA is the organization that represents market agents in the fresh produce markets, to say that the markets are deteriorating at an alarming rate. And they felt at the time that the municipalities are not doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of improving the situation. And they approached us as a department to say that since you guys have farmers as your constituency, it may be important for you to come and work with us. And we established at the time what was called a Project Rebirth. And on that Project Rebirth, we worked with everybody. We had Potato SA, as I'm saying, representing the producers, and there was also Fruit SA, there was also DFDC, which was an organization that represented the black deciduous fruit producers. We also had APEC in there as the regulator for agents, and then we also had IMASA. We also had COCTA, even though they were not necessarily active in that committee, and we worked with everybody. What we did at the time, we talked to everybody in the markets. We talked to market management. We've talked to the farmer representatives. We also talked to the agents representatives to identify what is it that they consider to be areas of critical importance. And I think from that process, they identified about 10 issues. And amongst them, there was an issue of infrastructure, which is what you've touched on, to say that the infrastructure is deteriorating. There was an issue around legislation, there was also an issue around the operations in terms of what is it that you need to do when the produce comes into the market to make sure that you keep the records so that everything is in balance, because there were a lot of issues. There was also transformation. There were also issues around security and all that. And from that point, we developed what is called the codes of best practice, which we're trying to give things that needs to happen in order for the markets to work properly. And as I've said, that the infrastructure was one of those things. And from that process, what we decided to do as a department, we came up with a bill where we wanted to create a national agency that can assist us in terms of making sure that we have something that can take care of markets in terms of infrastructure, transformation, and all those issues around the operations and all that, because that's where we believe that there are a lot of problems, because we thought that if we have an institution of that nature, will assist us in terms of making sure that we keep everything intact. But the challenge there became when we had a bill, and the Office of the State Law Advisor advised us that what we were trying to do was in a way unconstitutional, because according to the regulations and the law as it stands, we as a Department of Agriculture are only responsible for the conduct of the agents in the market, not necessarily the market from a management point of view. That is a municipal function, So as a result, you'd find that majority of the problems that you may have identified, from infrastructure deterioration, issues around security, transformation, those are what one would call operational issues. And as a result, we do not necessarily have a control in terms of what is it that the markets should do. Currently what they do, they work according to their own bylaws. Each and every municipality has got its own bylaw, where if they want to introduce any change, they go according to what their bylaw says. So we then thought that it may be important for us to now get COCTA back to the table to try and see what is it that we can do to rescue the situation, because we are also not happy with what is currently happening in the market. But we are currently held back by the legislation. As it stands now, we can only deal with the agents, not necessarily the market at large. So from legislation point of view, in addition to what my colleague Billy has said, we are also responsible for Agricultural Produce Agents Act, which is an act that is responsible for the conduct of the agents. We've got APEC, which is Agricultural Produce Agents Council. I think they are also going to come and make presentation later today. So that is where we are as a directorate. We are responsible for that. They've got their own rules in terms of what is it that the agent should do. what is it that should be followed if you want to be an agent? What are the type of what is the type of training that you need to go through? How do you get registered? And then once you become an agent, then what is it that you need to do in order to make sure that you pay the money to the farmers and the municipality, and all those regulations are there. And if you don't follow the rules, they already have their own tribunal in terms of how they discipline those that do not follow the rules. And they give the department annual reports in terms of the work that they do, and then we also work very closely with them. So as it stands now, we are a bit hamstrung in terms of what we can do to intervene in the markets. We only have powers to deal with the agents, not necessarily the market at large, and that's where we believe that the bigger problems are at currently. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So I'm glad you went there. I was going to come back to it. We'll come to it later. But so speaking about Project Rebirth, was that intended to address some of the issues that were raised in the Section 7 committee reports?
Yes.
All right. So Project Rebirth, it's still currently running. Is that right?
Yes.
In spite of the challenges that you've mentioned, but the intention is still to carry out.
Yes, I think now the major emphasis is on how to get more powers, because what we have done in the past, it was more voluntary in a way. You know, a market can only cooperate on voluntary basis. But with that, we've had huge challenges where other markets decided not to participate, primarily because they run the markets, but they don't see markets as an integral part of their work, you know. And as a result, they choose not to participate, and there's nothing we can do currently. So our emphasis now is more to try and see what is it that we can do to get more teeth, because we really need that at the moment. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. But all right, so those Section 7 committee reports and the recommendations that were contained therein, they were adopted by Project Rebirth. So the ones that you mentioned, the lack of investment in the markets, management and ownership, which seems to be a big issue for you as well, the legislative framework, and obviously then commission systems at the market. So I think maybe if just for the record, can you maybe provide Delred's views on those recommendations, and whether you still intend, despite the challenges at least, intend implementing those recommendations?
Yes, I think the situation as it stands now, we still believe in those recommendations, and we believe that they have to be implemented. Like we said, if you look at the issue of infrastructure, it's not something that can be done voluntarily, you know. It's something that, in our view, it should be done across the markets. So what we have had in the past, we have had challenges where, especially in the markets where in the municipalities where there's no stability. If a council moves out, another council comes in, they will have a different view and understanding in terms of what is it that the market is all about. And as a result, you'd find that there was a program on the way to refurbish the market, and when they come, they stop it just like that, and then it's back to zero. That is why the issue for us is to what is it that we need to do to make sure that there's uniformity in what we do, because as it stands now, markets don't work in that uniform way. You know, infrastructure, it's one issue. Again, there's an issue around ownership and management, where a municipality on their own, they can decide the type of system they want for their own market. Like in Joburg, you would have what they call a corporatized entity model, where the municipality would corporatize and get board of directors, and then that board of directors will hire a CEO, and then they work with that CEO, and the CEO would report to the board, and that board would report to the municipality. And then you would have others like your Tshwane, Durban, where they would be within the LED component, a different system altogether. And then you have another one like Cape Town, where the city of Cape Town decided that the market is not something that they would want to do, and then they decided to get an operator from outside. I think the company got up something like 20 years lease to run the market on behalf of the municipality. So as you can see, it's not easy to have uniformity in a setup where markets on their own don't even have the same model in terms of how they are run and managed. Hence, as a department, we strongly believe that in order for us to be in a position to implement all the recommendations that are there on the Section 7 reports, there has to be that structured way in which the markets should be put in. Otherwise, we will continue having the same challenges that we are having currently. Thank you.
I mean, we've received 70 plus submissions from submissions from 70 plus stakeholders, and almost all of them have indicated the strategic importance of the NFPMs as a platform, specifically for for informal traders. We understand that the sort of formal retail sector has moved away. They've sort of vertically integrated in their supply chains. But for your informal traders and servicing the informal sector in South Africa, these markets are crucial. Now, the first Section 7 report came out in 1999, if I'm not mistaken, 24 years ago. The same issues that were indicated there, were outlined there, still persist now, 24 years later. Now, I understand the challenges that you've got, but I mean, Project Rebirth came out in 2013. 10 years ago. Comes back to my point earlier about a plan. Now, where are we going to, I mean, it's got to a point now where you can't almost use these markets. I mean, we had submissions, we had people coming here on last week as well, indicating just how bad the situation has got on the ground. And you understand that and you agree with that. But something has to be done. Now, what is the plan going forward? I mean, I understand the issues with the municipalities, but there has to be, I mean, ultimately you are the custodians of this very, very critical, platform. What is going to happen going forward? And what is it that we can do as a fresh produce market inquiry from a competition perspective to assist you in that regard?
Well, I think as I've indicated before, that for us, what becomes important is for us to get more powers in terms of what is it that we can do as a department. Like I said, that currently the legislation states explicitly that everything to do with the operations of the market, it's a local government function. Until we change that part of legislation, I don't think there's not much we can do. Hence, I'm saying that there's even a report from the Office of the State Law Advisor to say that that has to be respected, because, as I said, what we wanted to do was deemed to be unconstitutional, because our view was that municipalities have got their own challenges, and some of them really they don't have capacity really to do what is expected of them in terms of running these fresh produce markets. So until we deal with that issue of legislation, I'm afraid we are going to have these challenges. At the moment, we can only try and improve in terms of how the agents operate in the markets, because that's where we are empowered by legislation. But the rest of the markets, we don't. Like, for instance, as I've indicated, we do not even have a say in terms of who gets to be appointed in those markets. Those people don't report to the department, so they can do as they please, or not necessarily as they please, but they can only report to their council, not necessarily to us. So the issue of legislation for us, it's something that we believe has to change very quick, so that we can be empowered to deal with
Are the municipalities blocking that?
Yeah, some of them, because remember, these municipalities are generating revenue from.
We've seen it. It's an enormous sum of money.
Yeah, so for them, they still see these markets as a revenue generating something. So they still want to have control, because all that money, remember, out of the 17, 18, I think now it can even be around 40 billion. I'm speaking under correction. They would normally be entitled to around between 5 and 7% of that.
5%.
Yeah. So you can see it's a lot of money, and some of them are not necessarily willing to.
So that money is not being used for its purpose that it's being collected.
No, it's not at all. Because
what's happening to that money?
The money goes into the municipal pool, and then the municipalities from there, they can use the money to build schools, hospital, roads, and all those things. So very few markets get that money back in terms of reinvestments. That is why you have all these problems that we are currently having. Maybe just to also give you an example, one of the things that we attempted, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, was to assist the market in Mangaung, in Bloemfontein, to replace their ammonia plant. It's something that it's not necessarily our mandate, as I've indicated, but we went through the provincial department to say that can you please help the guys there to replace the ammonia plant, because we felt that it was something that was becoming dangerous, and also to put the fence for security purposes. So the department was willing to put 5 million aside for that work. What the municipality had to do there at Mangaung was also to make sure that they also contribute financially. But the problem became that they were under administration, and they felt that it's not something that they can do because they don't have money. So we ended up replacing the fence using the provincial Department of Agriculture funds, but we couldn't do the ammonia plant. So those are some of the things that, for me, they create problems in terms of what we would really want to do as a department. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe let's move on to the market agents that are operating on the NFPMs. And as you indicated, APAC will be coming as well. So, to the extent that you can answer these questions. But, what are your views on the current model that's operating at the NFPMs in relation to the market agents? Is it working, the current system working?
Well, one would say the system is working, but we believe that there are a few things that still needs to happen. If you look at the issue around how the sales are done, and some of the things that the agents do there during the Project Rebirth work. One of the issues that became prominent was the whole issue around late sales, issues around credits, where the agents and the farmers would give each other credits and all those things. And for us, those were the major problems. Hence, we even approached the Competition Commission, I think, around 2013, 2014. To say that please help us to investigate these things so that we can enhance our rules, because within the Act we also have the rules that we can put in terms of what is it that the agents should do when they conduct their business. So those are some of the things that, in my view, we still need to look at in terms of the conduct of the agents, how they they run their sales in the markets and all that. But as I'm saying, we have that latitude in terms of the rules within the Act that
Are those
we can
rules being
enhance that.
enforced? So I think for purposes of the record, what you're indicating, at least what you've indicated, that you've got issues around product reservation,
Yes.
late sales, price discrimination based on the identity of the buyer as well.
Yes.
As well as credit buying. Maybe just take us through these, one by one. Like, what do you mean by product reservation? How is that distorting the market and ultimately the price discovery process at the markets?
Well, with the reservation, what normally happens is that I think there were a lot of cases like that, particularly in Durban market, where the agents, or not necessarily the agents, but the salespeople who conduct the sales in the markets within the agency would reserve certain products for what one would say they are preferred buyers. And as a result, you'd find that most of the guys, primarily your hawkers and other people, when they come, they would be told that the produce is not there, but they are waiting for somebody to come and take that. So it's a reservation that, in our view, it's anti-competitive. You can't reserve the stock for somebody, and then when people want that, you're saying that it's not available. People can see it's there, but they can't touch it because it's reserved for somebody.
So how does that reservation happen? I mean, are people calling the night before and saying, I need X amount of pallets of potatoes, for instance, or is it somebody who's on the market floor as such? Maybe, if you look at Joburg market, it's got 3 halls. Somebody's in hall 3 and they need something from hall 1. A quick phone call saying, hi, do you have X amount, or do you have, can I lock in X amount of potatoes, and you get issued a price at that point. Is that what's happening, or maybe just expand on how that is happening? Well, I understand that there's limited time for trading at the markets themselves.
Yeah, what normally happens is that, you remember, this it's a relationship issue. It's a relationship business where the salespeople would have relationships with certain people. So how they talk, they can talk at their own time. But the bottom line is that through their communication, they can make it impossible for other people to access the produce that is there on the floor, primarily because it's specifically reserved for somebody. So
but you understand that if a price is locked in, so an agent is not going to just reserve produce without a price being reserved. Is that right? Or at least that's from my understanding from the submissions. So somebody would phone and say, I want X amount of potatoes, and the guy would say, okay, great, that's fine, this is the price. The price is then locked in. It has to be locked in terms of the market floor rules. Would that distort the market price or the price discovery process at all? I understand what you're saying, that it does seem unfair for somebody who's standing there and can't access that product, but we're more concerned about the price discovery process at this point and how that plays out.
Well, I think that those are some of the things that we wanted the Commission to help us with, to check the competitive side of it, to say that is it really legal for one to reserve, whether they may have agreed at a certain price or not. For us, was not an issue at the time. The issue was that within the competition rules or laws, can somebody discriminate and keep the produce when the rules clearly indicate that you must sell to everybody that comes. So that's why we also wanted your assistance in terms of investigating that, so that when we design our own rules, we can also factor in all those issues.
Yeah. So we'll look at it from the exclusionary aspects of it. But you mentioned you've got rules, obviously, that are applicable. And if those rules then prohibit that conduct from happening, why aren't those rules enforced? Or is it something you can enforce, or is it something that can be easily hidden from your view?
Well, currently we haven't enforced those rules because it's something that has been, I think, happening. Hence, we, as I said earlier, that we wanted the Commission to assist us in terms of whether all those things are really legal. Would there be a legal basis for those things to continue? And some of the things are happening not openly. Hence, we want a system in such a way that everything can be open and transparent, and then it can also be checked from the rules point of view.
Okay, so you essentially want validation for those rules, whether they
Yeah.
can be enforced from a competition perspective or not.
Yes.
Fair enough. And late sales, talk us through late sales as well. Is it similar to what you're indicating now?
Yeah, what normally happens there is that normally the market would open around 5 o'clock in the morning, and then they will close around 11, 12. It varies from market to market. But you still have a situation where other salespeople will conduct the business before the market officially opens or after the market is officially closed. So you'd find that now it becomes difficult to record all those activities because they are outside the what is the stipulated trading hours, and others have always been using the issue around the inefficiencies with the markets and their systems and all that to say that we are compelled to work outside the working hours. But you find that it becomes difficult now to trace all these things that are happening outside the stipulated trading hours.
So it's just difficult to monitor, is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yes.
But once again, you've got rules that prevent late
Yeah.
sales from taking place.
Yeah.
Okay. Credit buying, that's something we're quite interested in as well. Do you have evidence of this happening? I mean, we've been told that it doesn't happen a lot, that it sort of happens on a rare occurrence. It's usually outside of the scope of the business of the agents themselves. They don't like doing it because there's financial risk attached to it. But, this is something you raised. Is this something you're seeing a lot more of, or is it, like they indicated, something that happens on the odd occasion?
No, it's something that was brought to our attention during the Project Rebirth work that because
is it
of
ongoing?
Yes, because of this type of relationships, you would find that if people are giving each other credits and all that, in our view, it's not something that should be allowed. That you would have an agents and the farmers and some people having those giving each other credits and that type of thing. Because again, our view would be that it will create problems in the future in terms of how business is being run. Again, it was one of those issues that we do not necessarily have what one would say proof. It's something that was told to us as we were doing our work, that it's something that happens in the markets and all that. So, but what we wanted the Commission to do was also to look into that and also tell us if is it something that can be regarded as a legal thing, because our view was that it would be a bit problematic for the role players to have that type of a relationship where they're giving each other credits.
Sure, it is something we'll look at.
Okay.
Still staying on the agents themselves, we've noted a high level of concentration at the market agent level at the NFPMs. Is that something that you are also concerned about?
Yeah, I think currently the issue would be mainly around how the markets are structured, and also the buying power. You would find that for people in the cities, that's where usually you would have a lot of people who are buying and also the hawkers would normally be concentrated in the bigger cities. You would find that again because of their size, as they expand, it's to the detriment of the markets in smaller towns, because as what is currently happening now is that you would have people coming from, let's say, in Mpumalanga, Lowveld, passing their own market in Nelspruit and Witbank, coming to Joburg, primarily because in Joburg you'd have a lot of agents. Maybe the competition there, they can negotiate better prices, and they also have a lot of products, because they would not want to come and buy one thing. They would want to have a lot of things. So maybe there it may be something to do with how the markets are structured in bigger cities, and the buying power and all those things. But of course we are concerned, because we would want a situation where markets in the smaller towns, because that's where most of the production is at, are also growing at the same rate as the ones in the bigger cities.
All right. So now, if you look at the Joburg market, for instance, I think there's 15 market agencies operating on that floor, servicing thousands of farmers and probably thousands of buyers. 15 of them. From my understanding, the structural barriers to entry are quite low. If you think about the regulatory barriers and everything else, for the amount of revenue that's being generated on that market, we're a little bit concerned about the number of participants at the market agent level. I mean, is that something that's concerning you as well, that the department is looking into specifically?
Well, I think from our point of view, what is worrisome for us, it's not necessarily the number of agents that are currently there operating. What is worrisome for us is that it is a bit difficult for your black agents to penetrate the markets, because you have guys who are already well established there, and you find that the system is such that it becomes almost impossible for them to penetrate. Even if you look at those that have attempted in the past, the failure rate by the black agents, it's extremely high. Even out of that 15, you'd find that currently they may be plus minus 18. I'm speaking under correction at Joburg, and then only one or two, which are like your traditional black agents are operating. But you can see again that they are struggling. They are not doing as well as they're supposed to be, primarily because of all those issues around how to procure the fruits and vegetables from the farmers, and also once you are there are also issues around how the space is allocated. The markets currently, through their own municipalities, they've got their own rules in terms of how they allocate the space, and that usually would go according to the turnover that one is making and all those sales that you are generating and all that. And you'd find that as a result of that, those systems, they make it impossible or impractical for the new guys, especially your black guys, to penetrate those things. You'd find that even in Joburg, when a new black guy comes in, he or she will not necessarily get a prime spot, primarily because that person doesn't have a record in terms of what they have done in the past. Maybe they will get some spot in an obscure place, and it becomes
Is this something you've experienced?
Yeah, it's something that we have seen with our eyes in terms of how those guys are allocated. But again, as I've said, that as a department, we can only talk to the markets to say that we are seeing this. They are not obliged to act. We can instruct them to change how the things are doing. As I'm saying that, as I've said in the past, that the issue of revenue for municipalities is quite important. For them, they will be happy to have those agents that are generating money for them. But you would find that is at a detriment of our developmental agenda, which is to bring more black players in the space.
So maybe let's just unpack the transformation, because it is something that is very concerning for us as well. In fact, there's only 3 HDI-owned market agents at the Joburg market.
Yes.
And we've had representations from the Council of Black Market Agents who represent them as well.
Yes.
What, in your view, then? I mean, you said it's difficult if you're seeing a big high failure rate. Why are they failing? What is the sort of major barrier there? You mentioned the relationships, but explain to us maybe how you see those relationships providing a barrier to potential or to potential new entrants into that market, specifically from the HDI class.
Yeah, I guess maybe as I said, that the whole issue around relationships, it's quite important, because you would find that for the agencies that are there, your established agencies, they haven't started like recently, you know. They've been there for ages, and even the farmers that are supplying them, they've been supplying them for ages. So as it stands now, it becomes a bit tricky for farmers to switch to new guys, because those guys don't necessarily have a record. And again, I think the other issue that we've also observed, but we can enforce, is the whole issue around incentives, to say that if we are bringing the new guys in the system, what is it that we can do to make sure that they stay afloat? Because from what we have seen, those first 3 to 5 years are quite critical. If there are no incentives for those guys, you are rest assured that the majority are going to fail. We've even proposed to the municipalities that maybe one of the things that they could look into would be issues around the rentals for those guys when they come there. Maybe also consider the issue around the rate that the percentage that they pay. They shouldn't pay your normal 5% right away like your established guys. Maybe they start slowly until they get to a certain level, and also maybe try and come up with mechanisms to incentivize farmers to work with those new guys. But again, these things, they just come to the market management as ideas. We don't have mechanisms to enforce those things, to make sure that they get implemented at the end of the day.
But from a policy perspective, from the department's point of view, is there not something that you can do to create policy around this, and, you know, almost like you mentioned, these incentivization schemes, or whether there's anything else that you can do to assist these market agents?
Well, I think our view is that, as I've indicated, that everything starts with policy. I mean, it starts with legislation. You know, before you come to policy, you need to get your legislation in order to make sure that whatever policy that you come up with, it will be backed up by legislation. So currently, we don't have the teeth from a legislation point of view. So until we sort out that part, we can't have a proper policy, because that policy has to be informed by legislation.
All right. Sorry, Chair, just bear with me for a second. I'm jumping around a bit. Okay, so transformation at the producer level, your growers. I did indicate to you earlier that we went out in these workshops and we've met with the HDI and small-scale farmers and a lot of the associations as well. Mopani is Agricultural Association. So, in terms of the top 4 selling commodities on the markets, and I think we've identified them as It's potatoes, onions, tomatoes, and bananas.
Yes.
We've been told, and we've seen as well that, this is almost the exclusive purview of your white commercial farmers, that we're not seeing a lot of HDI or small-scale farmers entering or selling or growing, or supplying those particular commodities. Do you agree with that statement? Is that something that you have seen as well?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, I guess it's a whole lot of issues. Land, it's one of those. You will need a lot of land. You need there are issues around access to capital. Most of our guys do not necessarily have the capital to produce at that scale, and also the quality and the volumes required by the markets. You know that currently what the market require as part of the trust, you have to deliver certain quality and at a certain time, and currently as it stands, most of our smallholder guys are not in a position to deliver the bananas and the potatoes consistently, which is something that the markets requires. So it's, in my view, it's something that would still take time, but it has to happen.
Well, are there plans in place to assist farmers in that respect?
What we're doing currently is actually through the National Agricultural Marketing Council. What we do to ensure some transformation is that in terms of the levies that the industries get, they apply for levies, and they get approval from the minister. One of the provisions for them to get those levies, in fact, is guidelines that have been established by the National Agricultural Marketing Council, is that they set aside 20% of those levies to address issues of transformation. That is as far as we are able to go at the present moment in terms of addressing that transformation.
All right. Extension officers, the master plan indicated that you want to, or at least one of the goals is to appoint 10,000 new extension officers. Through our workshops, again, I think we picked up some concerns around the extension officers and the quality of service that they are offering to the small-scale farmers. Can you maybe explain to us the role that the extension officers play in this market, and where you see them fitting in?
In the markets, or generally?
In general, yes.
Yeah.
So in assisting small-scale farmers.
Yeah. No, they have a very big role to play, extension officers. In terms of information dissemination, that's their role. In terms of capacitating the farmers as well with technical know-how. So they have a very, very big role to play. At national level, unfortunately, we do not have extension officers. They are a provincial Department of Agriculture competence. But yeah, there's a big role that they have to play.
All right, so you won't then be able to tell us how many extension officers are currently employed in South Africa?
I would be lying to you if I were to give you that number. No.
All right, and then I suppose the same goes for their selection and their appointments. Yeah. Is this something that maybe you would look to take into the national sphere, or are you happy with it sitting at that provincial level?
You see, some of these issues revolves around, I think that there might have to be constitutional reforms, because those are question of competencies in terms of the three spheres of government. So extension officers are the competence that resorts with the provinces. So it might actually be something that is discussed intergovernmentally, but then national government can only try to influence. It's not necessarily their space.
So that goal of appointing 10,000 new extension officers, that's going to take place at provincial level?
Yes.
All right. I think I've actually covered everything in a roundabout way. I just want to take some questions from the team.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Samara, do you have any questions for Dalraj?
Thank you, Chair. And through you, if you don't mind, gentlemen, I'd just like to take you back to Project Rebirth once more, but perhaps from a different perspective. I think we've heard and we understand that the core problem with implementing the major recommendations in Project Rebirth is because you don't have the legislative powers to do what the recommendations ask you to do. And I think that's a long-term view, and I think that was your response also, is that, look, if we want to do that, the Constitution needs to be changed. And that's a long-term view, and, we understand that takes time, and, there's a lot of stakeholders involved in constitutional amendments and that sort of thing. So I'd like to take the perspective that I like to cover is to say, all right, so now that's a difficulty, that's a long-term difficulty, it's not going to be resolved soon enough. In the meantime, the sort of problems still remain at the NFPMs. I mean, they haven't been solved. So what I would like to understand from Dalrad's position is, I mean, has there sort of been discussions or planning or sort of solutions explored about how to sort of solve the problems in the meantime, and particularly from an informal sector? Has there sort of been any deliberations about, how can we fix some of the problems, if not through legislation changes, then perhaps through other avenues, particularly with assisting the informal sector perhaps? Has any of those deliberations, discussions, planning has taken place?
Well, what we would want to do, it's primarily to get the colleagues from COCTA as well as SALGA to have that bigger engagement with them in terms of what is it that can be done to deal with the issues. So one of the things that we also did from our side was to come up with what we call a market assistance program, where we will take a bigger market that is doing well, has got structures and all that, and then we get people from that market, we assign them. We're using our own resources to a smaller market where they can help them to set up their systems, because you'd find that most of the markets, they will always have those challenges in terms of setting up their systems and all that. So we did that with the Joburg market and Pretoria market, where we got the guys, the colleagues from Pretoria market to work with their counterparts in Pietermaritzburg market, and other colleagues were assigned to East London markets. And from that process, we could see that things were improving from an operational point of view, because they helped them to set up their systems in a proper place. We also tried it with the Joburg market, where they were assigned to assist Swalplaki market. But that one was not that successful because of, again, the municipality that side. There were certain things that the colleagues from Joburg market wanted in order for the things to work, like how you set up your system at the gate in terms of getting the computer so that you'll be able to print the slips for the trucks that come in, and then that must also be linked with the IT inside, so that you have that seamless transition when the produce comes into the market and it gets recorded. You find that without those systems intact, it becomes difficult to get the systems going. So again, there were problems in the municipality, and those things could not work. So those are some of the measures that we have tried informally to ensure that at least we try and get the smaller markets to come up and running. Again, we tried that with Wheatbank and Machabeng in Velcom. But again, those were not successful primarily because, again, the municipalities there, I think they had bigger problems in terms of their debts to ESCOM and other things. So they did not think market was their main focus. And as a result, we couldn't get those going. So for us, it was also a lesson to say that in order for us to do these things in a bigger scale, we really would need more powers, because the informal way, it worked, but it did not work to the level that we wanted.
Right, and I mean, I'm asking the question in the context of, and I think you, in Dalrad's submission, the same was made about how critical the NFPMs are, for various purposes. Our interests are obviously market access. So, how producers, but particularly SME and HDP producers, how they access markets. And we've heard in the course of these public hearings as well, pleas from stakeholders that say we need to protect the NFPMs. And it's not only the Commission's responsibility, it's, it's entire government's responsibility to say we need to protect NFPMs, for the role they play as market access, but also for the role they play in food security, job creation, those sort of aspects. And I think the question is then directed to say, is that sort of the same views that Dalrad has, to say, well, we recognize how important NFPMs are? Is it sort of, where does it place in the many responsibilities of Dalrad? Where do NFPMs fit in?
Well, in our view, the national fresh produce markets are very important, and actually they are quite critical for our farmers and the rest of the value chain. As we have even said on our submission, that one of the bigger advantages with the fresh produce markets is that it's a bit easier for the farmers to penetrate, and there's also a lot of certainty in terms of when you enter there, that you would have to pay your 5% to the municipality, and then you can negotiate with the agents between 5 and 7%. So you do not have a lot of those hidden costs and all that. So for us, it's a plus for farmers. And then from the buyer's point of view, like it was indicated before, that we have over half of the people that are buying there who are your hawkers and informal sellers. And currently, they would not necessarily have a plan B in terms of there's no other platform that can supply them or cater them. So the markets are the only avenue that can cater them. And if we let them perish, I think it will be to the detriment of everybody, because they have a critical role to play. So for us as Dallard, I think we view this channel as a very, very important channel.
All right, and then moving on, related topic is access to finance. Again, it's this idea about barriers, what makes it difficult for SME and HDP producers to participate. We've heard that access to finance is very difficult. They don't qualify for loans, particularly because they don't have any support, they don't have capital, they don't have something that they can bargain with, they don't get the necessary support they have. One of the solutions that has been offered to bridge that problem is this idea around blended finance. So where government, either in the form of a grant or a guarantee, assists the smallholder farmer in obtaining a loan. So the loan would be sponsored by a private institution, like a commercial bank, for instance, but then a portion of that loan would either be guaranteed by the government, or then a portion of that loan would be turned into a grant. And that's what I mean with blended finance. And I know in literature there's been a lot of discussions about blended finance. So what in Dalrad's view is sort of the current position on this model about blended finance? If we need to get access to finance for SME and ACP producers, there's a possible solution. What is Dalrad's view on the feasibility of that solution?
Yeah, for us it's quite important to have something like that, because I think we have in the past had programs where we would give 100% grants, and I think we have accepted that it's not a sustainable model moving forward. So I may not have all the details, but what I know is that that process is currently ongoing, where Dallard is currently putting the systems together with land banks and also the other commercial banks, so that there's a proper criteria in terms of what is it that needs to happen for the farmers and everybody to access the necessary capital.
Right, so in principle, just to clarify, so in principle, Dalrad supports this idea of blended finance?
Yes, hence we are working very closely. We started with Land Bank, but we have brought in all the big commercial banks because the expectation is that they must also match us. If we put money to fund farmers, they too will also be able to put something, so we match each other. So it's quite important for us.
All right, thank you. And then finally, something again we've come across is we've had instances where there's been incredible support from government to farmers, and particularly SME HTP farmers, where they would tell us, well, without government I wouldn't have been here.
Yes.
So incredible support on the one side. On the other side, again, there's the other side where they say, well, there's been zero support. I've been asking, but it just doesn't come. And I think once you consider that in a bit more detail, I think one of the observations might be that there is a lot of support, there's a lot of willingness, but it comes across, at least from a farmer's perspective, so looking from the farmers to government for where the help should come from, to say that it appears to be very disjointed. So province does something, this institute does something, national does something, this is extension officer, that's not extension officer. And I think the idea that's coming across, particularly from a producer level, is that it's a very disjointed approach to assistance. So first of all, I'd like your comments on that, but as part of your comment is also to perhaps explore this idea about whether it would be feasible for national department, perhaps with the assistance of a department like COGTA, to have some form of coordination, to say, well, there's a lot of assistance in some places and zero assistance in other places. Isn't there a way that we can harmonize the support to say that, because I think the point is the right assistance needs to go to the right people at the right time. I think that's the idea. Is there a way to, to harmonize, to synchronize the support?
Yes, certainly. I think as the department we would go along with the harmonization of support. Like you've rightly said, there's pockets of support that come from different angles that at times might actually defeat even the purpose that support is meant for. So yes, we would agree that there definitely is a need for harmonization.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Murray, and thank you. Maybe I just ask from your submission, right? Excuse me. So just because I think what's important to note is that through this inquiry, so you can identify distortions, and the distortions have to be remedied if they are significant in ways that are practical. Right. So I just want to hear from you on just the top market distortions that you have identified as the department, and how you think those can be addressed. Just in some, I think I don't want to summarize a submission, but just for you to put this whole story together.
Well, if I understand your question well, the issue for us, actually there are a lot of issues in as far as the distortions are concerned. But from our point of view, I think maybe what we would want the Commission to do would be to assist us as a department to get deeper into the extent of those issues that we have raised, particularly around the credits and the late sales and produce reservation and all that, just to get a sense of what is it that we can do. If those things are outlawed, then we know that even from the rules point of view, we remove them completely, because our worry has always been that those things they are done in such a way that if we are not careful, they have potential to destroy what we are trying to build. So basically, what we would request from the Commission point of view would be to further look into those things and see if it's something that can be remedied, and if we need to do away with those, then they must be outlawed, and then we know that when the people are in the market, they shouldn't do all those things that they are currently doing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You want to add?
Yes, if I may add, we've gone through great lengths to try and get the national fresh produce markets working, but like we have indicated, there are these stumbling blocks that are in the way, and if there is a way that the Competition Commission could assist us with some of these issues. He's mentioned them, the ones that we've raised in the submission as well. If in some way the Competition Commission could assist us with addressing those, never mind the biggest elephant in the room, which is the legislation part of it, that we do not necessarily have the legal arm to stand on in terms of addressing some of the issues, especially the issues around the operations of the markets. But if at least in those areas that we have identified, that could be issues relating to competitive or anti-competitive behavior within the markets, we would be happy with that.
No, so thank you for that. And just on funding, because usually there's always a view that there must be more funding all the time, then there must be more funding. What is the adequacy of the support measures that are currently in place in this space, in your view? So if there are gaps, what would be those gaps, and how they can be addressed? Just broadly, funding in the fresh produce value chain. I think you've touched on agents. I think there are farmers. There could also be market access at retail. If you look at how, you know, retail right at the end, in some cases, is too informal to even be, you know, characterized as meaningful participation. It's still trading in the streets. It's you know, that kind of arrangement. But how have you assessed this yourselves?
The issue of funding, it's a challenge at the moment, especially if one take into consideration the difficulties that the government at large it's going through. But as a Department of Agriculture, I think we have tried, especially with the funding mechanisms that we have to try and fund, especially using a vehicle like CASP, where we try and fund farmers at a production level, and even go to an extent of assisting at a level of post-harvest, you know. So those are some of the things that we have tried as a department. But at the same time, we have also tried the blended funding, where now we try and get everybody, because our view is that it's not something that can be done by the government on its own. We need as many people as possible, particularly from the private sector, and we believe that once we get the banks in officially, then it will probably go a long way towards improving the situation. But like you know, funding will never be enough. But as we have also indicated, even with what we have gone through with the markets, our problems go beyond funding in a way. Like Mr. Kelembe said, that the whole issue around legislation, for us it's quite critical, and it is also our hope that maybe as part of the recommendations, or without preempting what you're going to find, that we would also have to look into that, to say what is it that we have to do in terms of streamlining our legislative arm, because as it stands for us, it really is becoming an impediment in terms of what we need to do moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks. And maybe, and I know that we're going to be hearing from the Department of Water and Sanitation, but there's this issue around water rights, and I think it does also affect you in a way, even in how you can support farmers. What's your view on this constraint, and how maybe, at least from your department's view, how this ought to be addressed?
Well, currently, what we do, especially at the level of CASP, which is a Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program, we work closely with the colleagues from the Department of Water Affairs, and also our colleagues within DALART, who are responsible for engineering and water support, to ensure that the farmers that we assist have water license, water rights, and all those things, because we have had a challenge in the past where we would fund somebody only to find that they don't have water rights or water license, and it becomes a problem, especially when now they have to expand or to find that what they've been doing it's illegal. So what we have done since then was to rope in the Department of Water and Sanitation to assist us with that aspect of water licenses and all that, so that each and every project, one of the requirements would be that for you to be funded, you also have to have a water license, to make sure that we cover that part. But the challenge with that is that now you have got a lot of guys who are excluded because they don't have those water licenses. But it's something that we are discussing with the colleagues at Department of Water to make sure that we deal with that situation. Because of that, now we are not funding as many people as we do, because it's clear that there are a lot of guys who are still having challenges with these water licenses.
Thank you very much for that. May I check if you have any closing remarks you wish to make? Because that was my last question.
Thank you, Chair. From my side, I would say that the inquiry into the fresh produce markets is very, very important. We view it as a very, very important inquiry, precisely because, like I think we have indicated before, there's a lot of your hawkers or your street traders that actually depend, their livelihoods is actually governed by whether we have the fresh produce markets surviving going forward or not. And if those markets were to be to go by the wayside, it would affect quite a lot of people. We're talking issues around food security here as well. So it becomes very, very important for us to make sure that we get the national fresh produce markets working as perfectly as they can. So we definitely welcome the initiative that the Competition Commission has taken in this regard, and hopefully that it will come up with recommendations that will go a long way towards addressing the issues that we had identified. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mantata, Mr. Makafula, and Mr. Kelembe. Thank you very much for making the time. We do appreciate it. Thank you. We will take a break. I think the next stakeholder is at 14:15. So we will be back here at 14:15 to resume with the next stakeholder. So thank you very much.